Ladies and gents, this is ML's Like Teen Spirit. Today, Julia's back with me. Julia, welcome back.
Thank you, John. I had so much fun, I had to come back.
Wonderful, Julia. Well, last time we were talking about political capital, and this time I'd like to move it along, please. But similar themes where I'm interested in getting data leaders to explain to people how to do a good job, how to make the best of new opportunities, and so on and so forth. And I've been looking for someone to help me explain what they need to think about when they're putting together data strategies. So my reflection on this is sometimes this is a task that's given to someone like new in a role. Can come sometimes it's driven by the company, like there's a data deliverable and we need or a customer strategy and we need to build on top of it. But sometimes it's kind of like a person arrives and they need to put together their own plan, which is like their personal things, but is helping a company. Like, how do we make more of this data that we've got, or what do we need to do to create more value from it? So I've seen this happen, that people get asked to sort of put together this plan, but it isn't always something that they've done before or that they've had any experience of how to do it. So I think you might have done this before, or at least can help us with the thinking. Yeah. So can we kick this off? The bit I would like to do is put you in a time machine. You know, imagine that we took you back to one of these big banks that you worked in. I was that guy and said, Julia, you're new here. I am non-technical. I don't know anything about data or the systems that we have, but I need to know that you've got a strategy to work with this data that we've got. I need an 80-page PowerPoint in 2 weeks' time. Now, Julia, what do you do from there? What information do you gather? What thought process do you have to build this output?
Yeah. Well, you don't do 80-page PowerPoint because then nobody, So it's interesting. So when you start, usually in the companies like that, at the senior role, driving data or technology or what have you, you do get a bit of a honeymoon period. Meaning that you also get to work you have meets and greets scheduled with the business leaders of the company. And also, if you did your job right when you were interviewing, you have some idea as to why they're hiring a data leader. And if you're going to a big financial services institution, one of the things that you probably know coming in, or at least you know what you've been told, whether or not the focus is regulatory, so risk controls agenda or regulatory agenda, or it's more of a growth agenda. One of the things actually that I'm seeing recently is that those larger organizations tend to hire data people to deal with regulatory stuff, and then they hire head of AI to deal with the growth, which I think is actually the wrong way of approaching it, but that's a different topic. So coming in, and let's say that you're lucky enough and you come in and regulatory stuff is all taken care of, or it's kind of humming along and it's not burning. So you get to do the growth. So one of the main things is understand the business strategy of the company. And ideally, and I know it's really, really hard to do during the interviews, you understand, but what you want to understand is their business strategy. Because I have known companies which there wasn't really a business strategy that could be articulated. It was articulated at a very high level. You know, our strategy is to serve our customers, okay, as opposed to what somebody else who is not there to serve their customers, or our strategy is to innovate on our products. Lovely, and everybody else doesn't want to innovate. So you have to look for things beyond that, because pretty much every company would have a high-level strategy saying, you know, we want to get more customers, or we want to get better products, or you want to get our margins under control, our costs under controls. And then there is the risk piece, right? So we want to make sure that we are managing our risk appropriately, and then that's where regulatory is. So you need to understand where you are and whether there is a really good business strategy across different business lines, across customer, product, and operational, and the cost piece of it, operational efficiency. One of the things in my experience, unfortunately, getting efficiency done through data is usually very expensive. So yes, you can get efficiencies, but you're spending a lot of money to get the efficiency, and you're kind of nullifying the efficiencies that you're getting by the amount of money you're spending to build the platforms, to build the capabilities, to keep basically cleaning up data. Because efficiencies through data is straight through processing, it's removing manual interventions, and all of that requires clean data. If you don't have front office commitment to clean data for their own purposes, for their own strategies that have to do with customers and products, usually product services, you're not going to get that commitment to the extent to make efficiencies worth the money you're going to spend to get the quality after the fact. So hopefully that made sense. So basically, this is what you do. You have to understand the business strategy. And if you're lucky, there are, in fact, well-articulated business strategy around customer acquisition, customer retention, product penetration, cross-sell. And then you have to understand what's in there already, right? So what kind of maturity does the company have? And then you figure out what do you need to build, and you go from there. So this is not 5 minutes. What I said right now, what did I spend like 5 minutes talking about it? It takes longer, and it requires and building the relationship with the business, understanding the business, building your political capital, going back to the conversation we had the last time, and also understand good team and understanding of technology state or state of capabilities that you are working with, and then understanding what you go from there. And then you go into strategy and the roadmap.
So let's pick at some of these points. So I understood the business strategy, making sure you can read this. I understood the part about the efficiency example of, like, before you say you're going to do something here, try and understand how much you can affect it, or actually are there some elements that are utterly out of your control, and you would be a fool to say you can deliver on this piece because it's conditional upon front office, something like that. So there's this understanding of these moving parts. Take me to the meet and greets, Julia. Like, what you meet all these people from these other groups. Like, what is it you're doing when you meet them? What is it you're talking about and trying to extract from them?
So that I had to learn the hard way, because originally the conversation I would have was, tell me about your problems with data. Bad conversation to have.
Right.
The reason is what you're going to get back is the list of the reports they want to have fixed. You're not going, and you will have a huge list of to-dos, and all of them are going to be in a low-hanging fruit. And one of the problems with the low-hanging fruit, that's usually low-value fruit, but fixing the reports requires money. And then, okay, yeah, you fix my number, and now I get report on time, but you just spent, 10 people fixing it, and I had one person doing it. So what's the value of this? So you get a lot of, and I've had a lot of those conversations. So the question is, what are your problems with data is not a good question. The question that I like to ask, and I'll ask a lot now that I'm a consultant and I work with my clients and I talk to the business people, tell me about your goals. Tell me about your strategy. So, but though I don't use the word strategy because sometimes people get a little defensive. So it's more, what are your goals for the year? What are you trying to achieve from the business perspective? How are you going to be evaluated by your manager? It depends which level. Don't ask CEO of the business line how they're going to be evaluated by CEO of the company. Generally not a good question to ask. But what are the goals? What are you striving for? What are the challenges you're seeing? What do you have in place? Do you think it's an easy hit goal, or is it something that you think you're going to have a challenge with? Then, and you don't even mention data very much. What you do is that you have that conversation. So let's see the way you start. A business leader comes in and tells you, I want to see your strategy, how you're going to help my business. So that's a conversation you have with them. And then you come back and say, you have told me you have 3 goals. Of those 3 goals, this is what I have seen are the capabilities you have in place to achieve them. Here is where you have gaps. And to address those gaps, here is the things we can do within 6 time frame, and then something that will take 12 months, and this is something that's going to take 2-3 years. And that's the conversation you have, and it's not like 2 conversations. It's continuing conversation, not just with the leader, but with their team. And one of the things that you do have to find within their teams are people who are data aware, because they will tell you in more detail what are the data capabilities of the business, because that's one of the really big things that I talk about and I teach and I try to basically establish for the companies I work with, is the business side of data capabilities. Because data capabilities, not just the platform. So it's not only a data catalog or data warehouse or data quality platform. That's a technology piece, but there is a huge business piece, that things that business has to do for those platforms to be successful and deliver on business results. And that's usually not clearly understood and or communicated. So that's another piece that you have to build in. And it's more than 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you can do high level. This is the goals. This is how we need to achieve it. But yeah.
Well, Julia, I want you to take us there. So I've heard the business strategy and understanding it, interviewing some stakeholders. Again, check what they want aligns with anything at all, the business strategies. Be careful what questions you ask, like making about their goals, not the data itself. I recognize that. And then you said about the assessment of current capabilities. So and I suppose you're looking for this connection between how likely is it that all the things they want and the business wants, how likely is it we have the right things to ever deliver on that? And
yeah, well, it's not as likely, it's where do you start. So if you like, roadmap is, you need 2 points. You need your destination, target state, and you need the starting point.
So tell me about the starting point, Julia. So if you were back in the bank and you had to assess this kind of set of capabilities, we're calling it capabilities, so it will involve, what types of data do we have, or the tech or something, but I'm making it way too simple. What would you be thinking if you had to build that slide to say, right, I need to give my boss, who maybe doesn't, isn't as passionate as me about all these things, an overview of the capabilities? What's on your sort of checklist? Like, what would be on your, what's on your plan to acquire that info? What are you looking for?
So the big part is, again, you do have to dig in on what's happening on technology side, and in your interviews of the business, you need to understand how much it's understood the work that business stewards need to do for the business. And so that's capability piece. But one of the things that I do, there are a lot of frameworks there on assessments of the capabilities. There is like EDM Council or EDM Association, DCAM assessment. There is assessment from DAMA. So that tons and tons of formal frameworks for assessing current state on data capabilities. What I end up doing is actually creating my own, depending on the goals of the company and what capabilities they would need at target state. Because depending on the goals, not everything can be or should be built at the same time. And while there are recipes, for example, if you're establishing like the recipe I see people following, the 2 types of recipes I have seen people following most often. We're going to establish data management, data governance, and we're going to create data council, which is a type of capability, and we're going to buy data catalog, which is a metadata management tool. That's a recipe. Like the amount of time I've heard, like, okay, we're going on our data management journey, and we already got a council going, and we're aligned with the people, and we know who the people are, and we have the time for the meeting, and we bought the data catalog. And the question I ask, okay, but what's the business value? And then the other side, we're going to have data strategy going, and we're going to build a data warehouse, which means we're going to build a data warehouse. And can you help us figure out which data warehouse to build? And again, my question is actually exactly the same. What value are you going to extract? What business process is going to serve? What goals is it going to help within the company? So if you were doing standard assessment, you would go, data governance assessment. Do you have a council? Yes, no, maybe, right? They're like usually 5 levels. Do you have data catalog? But for the goals of the company, the council may not be the first thing, because council have very specific purposes, and what the company needs is not about the console. It's, let's say, about their product, managing their product inventory really well. That's not about the console. That's about the people who understand the product. And then it's on the technology side, it's also not about the data warehouse. It's about creating that unified place for the product and connecting it from customer acquisition all the way to administering transactions and products, what have you. So if your business, like acquisition of the customer for the check-in account, and then bringing on board, and then administering check-in account, and then if somebody rolls off, basically killing the check-in account. So this is not about the console. This is about understanding all the features of your checking account. So the way you price it, the way you sell it, the way you price it, the way you administer it, it's all ties together so you can see the full utilization and answer the question, whatever questions you wanted to answer. So evaluating your maturity of how well you're doing on data warehouse, data catalog, and data console has nothing to do with what the first step on your roadmap. Does that make sense?
It does. So I'm now piecing this together like the puzzle. So we've got the business objectives, interviewing the stakeholders, getting all the current capabilities aligned. So you've got this picture of what could be done and how to make it impactful. What's the next step, Julia? So when you have all these inputs that you would require, what happens next when you've done this? Like, how do you put this all together to, I don't know, gain consensus, or do you just tell everyone that this is what should happen? What's in the next step of the communication of this when you've done this before?
Well, presumably when you're doing all of this, you're not going away for a month and then coming back with a perfect PowerPoint. You keep talking to people and you're saying, so the way, again, it usually, and it's much more often now, like in the last 2 years, happened for the clients, you come back and you say, here is what I heard you say your goals are. And here is the assessment. This is the capabilities you need to achieve those goals. And in talking to people, this is the maturity you have across those capabilities. So what I'm seeing is the roadmap that you have, if you concentrate on this set of actions, so now you're getting to initiative, project, now you're in the roadmap. You say minimal viable product is this, because to do this, it will bring the best combination of value versus amount of time and resources. And usually those things actually end up not being technical builds. So one of the things that MVPs very rarely will be the ones that require the build out of the data warehouse. So if your minimal viable product requires you to build data warehouse or data mesh or data fabric or whatever, right? Or data lake, all the names that are thrown around, that's probably not a good candidate for minimal viable product, because it's probably going to take you at least 6, well, depending on the size of the company, somewhere between 12 and 24 months. So, and value ought to be delivered faster.
Julia, do you have any rules of thumb for this? For example, say you had this list and there's 25 things there. It's a large list. We won't get through them all, and you can try and rank it by the value and these sorts of things. But do you have any rules of thumb as to like what you would lead with? Is like, here's my top 2, top 3. Is there any anything that you would just, again, I'm obsessed with the deck. Like, it's usually good to kind of frame your most 2 important things you've identified or something. Is there any way that you would, like, I don't know, put this together and try to narrow people's focus?
So it's value versus resources or cost. So what you want to start with that has highest values given the cost, because sometimes the highest value things are the ones that are going to take time and money, right? And that's not where you want to start, because you have to prove the value and you have to also validate your assumptions. And you can't go away for 2 years, because whatever you're delivering to, the strategy might have moved. So the 2 things, it's value versus cost, but also is it buildable on? Or is it one-off that then when you have the second one, it doesn't rely on the first one at all. It needs to build completely new set of technology and capabilities. And some things actually took me long time to understand, and understand where a lot of banks, for example, ran into trouble leveraging investments they've made in regulatory compliance for growth. Because for regulatory compliance, a lot of it is summarized data with the financial or risk view. And if you want to leverage what you've built the capabilities, it doesn't easily translate on customer retention, for example, that one of your business lines. That's why that linkage very often didn't work, and a lot of capabilities were built, and they're very useful for regulatory compliance and for risk management. But to translate them into business growth was actually very challenging because capabilities were there, but it was different type of data and different type of business users or business stewards that were managing those capabilities.
Got you. And Julia, last question. Do you think any of these things you've described, you use the word growth there, do you think any of this is different in the case of like somebody joining a smaller company, like Scale Up, Mode, or something like this, high growth, where there was never a data strategy before, so there was no prior knowledge of this 80-page PowerPoint deck, but they have to put this together in a context that's different to the big corporate and these things. Is there what elements do you think are different, or what things do you think people could be more aware of?
So one of the things when you deal with the large legacy environments, there are a lot of bad habits that's been created. You have a lot of silos, you have a lot of line of business data warehouses, you have a lot of manual work, there are a lot of processes that are kind of embedded in the culture of the company. One of the things when you go with the smaller company that may not have as much maturity in terms of their technical infrastructure. So they're still managing a lot of their stuff on the spreadsheets. They may not have a lot of databases. You actually have a chance to leapfrog all of those bad habits and build a lot of capabilities from scratch from the front office, from front office's financial services kind of naming, but basically the parts of the company that operate the products upfront. And you build those capabilities end to end, which gets you to much better results, including efficiency results. So that's a huge opportunity that's possible in the companies that haven't been around for that long and haven't acquired both bad habits of silos, of cultural silos and technology silos. So that's kind of an opportunity. So I like a lot working with the companies like that because you can just do a lot more, a lot faster, and you get to a better result without building a lot of expense in. Because, for example, let me give you an example why it's not possible it's very difficult with the bank. A lot of banks still operate on COBOL.
Yeah.
And they process massive numbers of credit card transactions. If you want to move it to, let's say, master data management on onboarding, meaning you dedupe your customers before they get into your checking, savings, credit card accounts, you have to change those COBOL programs. That's high risk. Not only it's very expensive, but it's also high risk because you're processing so much and you have so many customers. So it's almost impossible in those situations to do, let's say, master data management end-to-end, which is one of the preconditions of getting efficiencies end-to-end. So.
Yeah, no, I love it. So in a high growth company or scale up, you're more likely to be able to build for a future state. And perhaps at the bank, you're making small incremental changes that slowly make things better, and so on. Now, Julia, I love it. On the earlier call about political capital, you were telling me, the battles that you fought for were trying to build for the future. So for anyone watching in these high growth positions and high growth companies, some of these things you can put on your data strategy will give you an easier life in the future. So the theory goes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Good. Julia, look, thank you for taking us through all that. We've hit time again. That was all hugely interesting. And thank you for participating. I've wanted someone to talk to about data strategy for some time. So thank you for doing this. Ladies and gents, this has been ML's Like Teen Spirit.